Yes, well, we've always thought this, but a study that's just come out from the ANU and Melbourne Uni shows that where the logging regrowth grows back after the total clear fell, which is the only method used around here, even though they might give it a different name of seed tree, it's pretty well clear fell back to bare earth burn, and then what comes up is like it's converted to a pulpwood farm basically. You don't get your forest back. What you get back is a tree crop, and it's perfectly suited for the wood chip industry because they like the nice young white straight uniform predictable trees. So where we used to have age diversity, species diversity, ferns, you know, the different stratas in the forest, you just get the one species coming back thick as hairs on a cat's back. As well as really thick regrowth that's very thick and very flammable, they compete with each other for light and nutrient and water, so you also get a lot of them die off, which are then like, it's just like creating a tinderbox. One of the dead wood to carry the fire and to burn really well, and then all this young oil-filled eucalypt foliage. And it's just like a funeral pyre, especially when it's around towns and communities. It really goes up like a bomb. Whereas you get your natural forest and you get your different strata in the forest, you get your canopy from the old growth really high, very hard for that to carry a fire like a crown fire, as in the younger forests that carry crown fires. You get the mid-story, you get the tree fern understory that creates this microclimate where there's always dampness, there's moss on logs, and it's just very fireproof. Natural forest is fireproof, and a lot of lightning strikes actually hit in those areas and they never go anywhere. But you get a lightning strike on a ridgetop or a regrowth forest and it just goes like a bomb. The whole landscape, the hillsides, wherever they log, it's drying it out and creating a different forest that's far more flammable. The way I see what's happening with the government planned burns, it gives the community a false sense of security. They have to do something to look after people from, you know, big bad fires. It's actually climate change that's creating it, and the logging. Both of those together are a deadly combination.
Well, in fact, the logging, according to some theories, is creating the climate change, certainly in the hinterlands.
It's a, you know, it's a feedback loop that's just not going to end unless the government does something to say, right, this is enough, let's try and get it back to as it was. But what they're doing as a solution is saying we need to burn to stop it burning. And what they're doing is taking out the natural fireproofing of a forest. And that is all the little hoppers and scratchers and diggers like the potteroos, the bandicoots that turn over leaf litter. Lyrebirds, they can turn over about 2.5 tonnes a year, each lyrebird. So they're constantly making this compost out of the leaf litter and twigs on the forest floor. The mosses, the fungi, the termites, all the insects, the moth larvae that are actually evolved to eat dry gum leaves, not much else is. These are the things that when they put a fire through and just say, all right, we're safe now, it's all burnt, they are destroying the very thing that can fireproof a forest that's been working for millions of years.
This is the leaf litter that all the animals dig up in the forest?
Yeah, constantly turning over so that it, you know, turns into soil and compost.
And it holds a huge amount of water.
Oh, water, nutrients, yeah, it grows the fungi. You know.
So it's not exactly flammable.
It's not flammable, but it's what the public are taught to fear.
Yes.
You know, but no, you leave the little animals in here and they'll get rid of it. They'll turn it over and digest it, and the fungi will eat through it. So they're killing off the little animals. They're exposing them to predation by foxes. They're taking that layer out that shades the forest floor, that keeps the dampness going. And if anybody's ever made a compost, they know you've got to keep moisture in it. And you've got to have your little greeblies and bacteria and everything working together to break down that leaf litter and the twigs. And that's why the old growth forest won't burn. And up here during the 2014 fires, we saw it roar through a lot of fairly dry open forest that's been logged. As soon as it hit Brown Mountain, it went out. They tried to burn it, with, you know, DEPI were trying to burn.
DEPI being the Department of...
DEPI being the Department of Primary Industry,
right.
Environment and Primary Industries. And what they were doing is not just, they weren't fighting the fire, they were just lighting more fire. That's a whole other story, the way they manage these fires.
Their intention was to light a fire that they could manage, which would mean that by the time the wildfire got to it, it would run out of fuel. That's their theory.
It also created an awful lot of really good overtime and bonuses. But anyway,
well, that's a valid thing to comment on.
Oh God, it is.
Because it's not.
We dare not, because oh my God, you're questioning these brave firefighters. Well, I didn't see any firefighters actually front a fire with some water. They were just lighting fires all the time. So the boundary was getting bigger and bigger, and that, you know, the bushfire probably would have been this big, but the way DEPI were managing it, the government firefighters, they were just kept lighting fires to try and burn back into it, and then they'd escape and jump, and they'd have to bulldoze and light another fire. And I'm sure about half the size of this fire was due to government initiated bushfires in the hottest period, in the dry summer. We had the big one up at Dedic. They didn't jump on that. That was one they could have jumped on immediately. That's the one that got out of control, and they were sort of waiting for it to come out, which meantime it got bigger and bigger until February the 9th, when it was so big they couldn't do anything about it, and it just sort of took out half of Tubbut, Bonang, Goongerah. We were surrounded by fires, and that February the 9th, it just, you know, burned out the top end of Goongerah and took out so much forest. It was so intense. There wasn't a green thing, a living thing left after it went through, and this is just for miles and miles to that extent. Somebody said they could have got in there, the rappel crease could have gone in. There was actually a way to get in there with four-wheel drives. They could have done something about that, but they didn't. Now,
they don't use the strike team anymore, do they?
No,
as they used to.
It's all too dangerous. But so they just wait for it to come out and make the fires bigger and bigger and bigger. And our volunteer fire brigade here, had to go out at night and put out fires that DEPI had lit the night before and went back home. You know, they've got bank hours, so like 9 to 5.
They knock off at 5 o'clock.
They're not patrolling at night. They're not doing work on fires at night when they could, when it's cooler, when it's damper, the air's got more.
Is this in the middle of a bushfire? They go home at night?
They go home at night, and they leave it up to us volunteers, our CFA, to go out and patrol at night at 2 in the morning, putting their fires out that got away, and then they come back in the morning at 9 o'clock and light them all up again for the heat of the day.
So you're saying that old-growth forests ultimately went up. What about the argument, though, that old-growth forest doesn't usually burn easily, and as we remove it, we're increasing climate change? It seems to me that it would be better to have more old-growth forest, less logging, to reduce the speed of climate change, even and the risk of any forest fires.
That's logical, and that's what all the science is saying. But the government would prefer to keep the logging industry making that money. A few jobs, I think there's 40 jobs involved in East Gippsland, but we're still destroying what has the ability to moderate our climate, and that is forest. The carbon capture and storage units, you know, the best in the world that we've got is our forests. We're knocking them down and creating these, you know, smoke, just ash landscapes with nothing there. So the more that they log, the more that the climate is actually heating up, the less carbon there is stored in the forests, the less temperature moderation there is over the landscape, and of course our bushfires are going to get much worse. In the past there has, you know, lightning strikes, yes, you know, Southeast Australia does get a lot of lightning strikes, and historically that's always been the case, pre-European, pre-Aboriginal.
Yeah, there were very big forests.
They were very big forests, and they had that structure where, you know, there are all these fire breaks in the landscape, all the wet gullies, the south-facing slopes, the forest that had a lot of thick undergrowth. Where it wasn't thick undergrowth, it stopped that heat and the wind driving fires through. In some areas, it just naturally it would open out and become dry, sort of grassy understory forest, and that's what a lot of the early settlers described. But it wasn't due to burning, it was due to lack of burning, and that's what a lot of the science is now picking up on.
Yes.
And we're just saying, oh no, the Aborigines used to burn, so we've got to do the same to be safe. You know.
Coming up this way, we've observed in the areas that have been really badly burned, piles of fallen logs and tree litter piled up, obviously by bulldozers and things.
What they are, and I've actually questioned this, and I've formally tried to get an answer. What they're doing now, they have this dangerous trees policy, because all of these trees that are left standing along tracks are dangerous. They might just fall on cars at any moment. So they have to go down and right along the tracks and cut down every tree that might possibly fall. And I've got photos of ones that are solid as a rock, not any rot in them, not leaning, and they've cut them down. And when they cut them down, of course, where you would have had a tree with a green leafy head and a trunk, you now have this pile of, it's a tinderbox waiting, you know, to burn, and along the side of the roads. Like, hang on, weren't you trying to make the roads safer? And all they've done is sort of bulldoze all of these trees and tree heads up along the side of the road. So now, if there's another fire that comes through, they're just going to be these massive big bonfires.
How long has that been going on for, this business of cutting them down because they're dangerous?
We just had that down here year before, 2013 they started doing that, down along Martins Creek, that area. So all of these habitat trees, the ones that are really important for habitat, feed trees, for gliders, you know, the nectar producing trees, they're the best, the oldest ones are the best. Cut them all down because they're dangerous.
Is there any idea, does anyone have any idea of what the governments, the successive governments think they're doing with this area? Are they going to turn it into some plantation forest, or are they going to turn it into farmland, or are they going to build apartments? Into plantations. That's what's been happening for the last 40 years, it's conversion to plantations. But now the wood chip industry is starting to say, no, we don't want those wood chips from Southeast Australia. Too far away. We'll get our wood chips from, you know, Vietnam or somewhere else that's got the eucalypt plantations growing. So now Deppy, who's had this agenda to create this wonderful wood chip farm for the Asian wood chip market for 40 years, it's starting to fall in a heap. So, God, we've got to keep ourselves relevant somehow. Oh, yeah,
I know, the fire economy. Yes, and they call it red gold now. And the people at Glen Allerdale...
Fire economy?
Fire economy, you know, keep Deppy relevant.
So how are they doing this? What does fire economy mean?
Well, it keeps the people employed, burning, cutting down trees,
to prevent bush fires and trees falling on people.
If there is a bushfire, you beauty, we get a lot of, you know, extra income for this, and we can employ our mates on bulldozers at $3,000 a day to push tracks and push trees over and all, I don't know. You know, it might not be any good, but we've got to keep them employed. And
you'd think they could employ a few of them as forest rangers, wouldn't you?
Oh, putting in picnic tables and walking tracks maybe might be a better thing. But,
monitoring.
You know, a lot of these boys do love their matches.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at the profile of a pyromaniac, and my God, I reckon a lot of them would be perfect for those boys in green overalls and driving around in those vehicles. All the way along here to our Brown Mountain forests, which was the test case in this court case, they have cut down every big tree along the way. There's no reason for it.
So these were the trees your court case was defending, largely?
Yes.
They've all been cut down?
Retribution. That's all it is. It's just absolute senseless destruction of giant big old trees. I actually did a comparison between what's happening in the Amazon and what's happening in East Gippsland, and relative to the area that we've got and the area and how much is being taken out each year as clear-felled logs, as clear-felled areas, it's pretty much on a par with the Amazon. It's just like, you know, East Gippsland is no better, and here we are saying, oh, world's best practices, it all grows back, it's all renewable. It's not, it's bullshit. They are destroying what is irreplaceable. Irreplaceable. We have 600-year-old trees. We radiocarbon dated the wood from near the centre of the tree. 600-year-old trees. And it's just turned into this smoky, ashen landscape, and it goes off to, you know, Asian wood chip factories. If it was anywhere else in the world, they would be valuing these forests as something so rare. It'd be the antiques of the natural world. And they'd be paying, you know, people would have to be paying big money to come and experience and stand amongst these giants and just be awestruck. But no, paper cups, throw away paper.